Hi guys, welcome back to the Butterfly Effect podcast. You're here for part 4 of our Detroit Become Human deep dive analysis. So I'm here with Jack.
How's it going?
And yeah, we're going to be carrying on our analysis. So as always, Jack's not played this game. He's just finished 4 more chapters, and he started off with Kara on the run. So Jack, you just woke up. You chose the car, didn't you? Just talk us a little bit through the scene.
I did. Yeah, so woke up in the car and rolled Alice away from me. She was still asleep. And you had 3 objectives, in essence, to sort of change your appearance. So you needed to find an item of clothing, I think. You had to cut your hair and you had to sort of check out the local neighbourhood. And so you sort of in this little fenced off area. I managed to grab a coat. I think that was from the trunk of the car that I was in. And I managed to find a pair of scissors. I cut my hair. And it then gave you an option to choose what colour hair you wanted. And I chose to go blonde. I'm blonde as well, so I just wanted to do that. And then I also looked around the sort of local neighbourhood and I looked through the fence and you see this copper outside. And initially, first of all, I thought it was something to do with the 24-hour shop because I stole the thief of money from the cash register. But then the camera pans and you see Hank and Connor in the area. And I thought it was quite cool because I suppose it's the first introduction of the story interweaving with the characters that you play as and such. And and then I suppose you just sort of you escape with Alice, don't you? And it's quite tense actually. It was a really good sequence. There's a really good couple of sequences in this chapter, but basically there's a chance that Kara could be caught. That's what Hank and Connor and all the police are out there for. They're looking for her and Alice. And there's just sort of these little quick time events, and of course you have the little bar, don't you, which again is just such a nice touch, where it sort of tells you how close you are to being caught. There was a couple of instances where I thought, oh my god, what the fuck have I done wrong? When you grab the umbrella and you sort of put it over your head, but the copper's walking past and the bar's gone right up, and you think, shit, I might be getting caught here. But yeah, it's a nice way to move through the environment as well. You have to cross the road a couple of times because you've got oncoming police and such. And there's the odd intercut back to Hank and Connor, I think. Just a beautifully executed scene. I did get away from it, but I know that when we looked at the flow chart, there was a possibility for a chase scene to ensue, so that would have been cool, but I did get one later on which made up for it. So yeah, really tense scene, but I enjoyed playing it, mate.
Yeah, it's good, and it's insane how varied it can be based off of where you spent last night. For example, I did it in the squat, and if you do it in the motel, for example, Connor and Hank will go to that motel. What was interesting is that when I actually chose to sleep in the squat, you actually play as Connor, and you have to kind of go around the house and, try and, find where, Alice and Kara are at. And, they're hiding under the stairs behind some boxes. And funnily enough, I didn't find them, but I actually did try. I thought I'd try, my best of all the characters, and I just couldn't find them in the end. But it was dead interesting because it reminded me of Fahrenheit, where you play the cat and the mouse, and it just was so reminiscent of Lucas and Carla. I really enjoyed this part. For myself, when I chose Kara's appearance, I went for the white hair. I just thought it was quite different, and I don't know, I just thought it suited her the best. I just thought it'd be quite a unique play for you to have this white-haired female character in the game. But yeah, also really interesting to see it as well as Markus. Kara's also removed her LED, so yep, she's going to be completely incognito. So it's only Connor that's not, a deviant or without his LED at the moment. So what you were saying about the sneak scenes, yeah, definitely really cool. I know a lot of people did struggle with this scene where you've got to kind of go keep scanning R2 and go towards the zones where the cops aren't, and yeah, hiding behind the bus stop, you know, like in that little bank area. And it is really tense, and this game does a really consistent good job of making your heart race, putting you on the edge of your seat, because, you know, the quick time events are challenging, and the soundtrack backs it up really well, and there's a level of difficulty, you know, there's not, when you complete it, you feel really rewarded, which is, you know, like we talk about the supermassive games a lot, but I'd say Quantic Dreams definitely has a more rewarding feel to it when, you know, the characters come away unscathed. And yeah, like to see your reaction when the chapter did finish, it was pretty cool to see your reaction to the flowchart, because, I mean, if you see the flowchart at the end of this chapter, it's enormous, based off of where you're in the motel, the squat, or the car. But, you know, Connor can find Kara, and then that can create a chase scene. It ends up on a motorway where Kara can be hit by a car and she can die, I believe. Or it could be Connor that gets hit by the car and Connor can die. I might have remembered that wrong, but either way, I know that Connor can definitely die at that scene. So yeah, just dead interesting. That, you know, there's so much to this one little scene here. But yeah, I think Kara's story is certainly kicked off very strong, personally. So yeah, anything else to mention there, mate?
Yeah, so like you've just said about you can play as Connor and Kara, and you said you played as Connor, like looking for her. So did you play as Kara at all in this chapter? Like, can you switch between characters? You know, like in the Dark Pictures, where there'll be a moment where you're playing as one character, and then the camera will just sort of swoop to someone else and play as them, or was you literally playing as Connor this whole chapter?
Ooh. It's a good question, and I don't particularly remember, because I think the first time I played this game must have been around 2020 or no 2019 more like.
Yeah.
And since then I've platinumed it, so, you know, like I did the motel most recently and the car myself, so I can't quite remember, but I just remember being Connor in the squad. But yeah, certainly when you're in the motel, you play as Connor, and you have to go and knock on the room, and you think you've caught Kara, but when she undoes the shower curtain, she's gone, and then it cuts to Kara going towards the train station. So I have a strong feeling that it's if you choose to squat in the car, you will play as Kara, but if you choose the other two, you'll play as Connor. Yeah. So it's really interesting how it's worked out, and of course, you know, it's, without, you know, mentioning, it is the first time where two of our playable characters cross over and potentially acknowledge each other. So, you know, it's quite nice how you kind of get that, you know, they're not kind of just separated. You know, the stories do somewhat intertwine at some point. Before we move on as well, actually, a point I forgot to mention is for the eagle-eyed of you in the chapter before, where you're in the police station with Connor, you'll notice a cop debrief Hank breaking up his fight with Connor, saying, "Oh yeah, we've got that report, we've got to go see. That person's reported the escape of the AK-400." And you don't realise at the time that he's actually talking about Kara, and it shows that Todd's reported it in. Because when they're sort of investigating, you know, Connor kind of analyses like the bus route and stuff. So yeah, a little hidden Easter egg there.
Oh, cool. Yeah, now ready to move on to the next one, mate.
Brilliant. So yeah, this is the Jericho scene. So, you know, whereas Markus, this is the first time we've seen him since he's a new person without an owner. You know, the only purpose he has really is this tip off to say, find Jericho. I mean, it's pretty linear in terms of, you know, the story and choices, but it's more about the gameplay here. So yeah, Jack, tell us a little bit about, you know, the scanning for the clues, but also a little bit about a new sort of gameplay feature we've got, really. We have Connor, who does the reconstruction with solving crimes, but Markus kind of has the same sort of similar style thing, but for parkour. So what did you think of this whole sequence?
Yeah, so I suppose I'll start off with the scanning, because that's primarily what you're doing with what you're doing at the start. So yeah, you've just got these graffiti pictures, and you've got to look for this one particular icon to scan. There was a couple of times, wasn't there, where I was like straight up struggling with it. I was like looking all over the shot. I was like thinking, where the hell are they? There might be like 3 of them, and I'll find 2 of them. Like, where the hell's the last one? But yeah, like I'd get there eventually, and you just got to like do like 5 or 6 of them. But then you come to this like scene, where like you get into this new gameplay mechanic where you can do some parkour, and it can like show you two options. So like if you choose one particular way, you can see like the figure would then, you know, maybe run up and jump and then fall, and it would say so and so is not stable. And then of course if you look the other way, it then shows like that's the way that you have to do to, you know, to get up there, which I imagine you have to do that. Like I know it's a new gameplay mechanic, but you can't purposely fuck up on the So really cool, really interesting. Like haven't seen it before. Like even though it's linear, do you know what I mean? It's just something different. Like, and I think it gives Markus a sort of certain quality and personality trait as well. In that, obviously, with his parkour and stuff, it sort of separates him from the other two characters. But yeah, so it I suppose all of that culminates into like you have to get onto this boat, and I don't know, like I saw that there was a bridge, and I was thinking that's far too easy. Like something's going to happen to the bridge, and I was like, I'll have a look around. But it turns out like you can go across the bridge. I didn't. I went to the left and like climbed up a crane, went up a ladder, walked along, and then like dove into the boat. And to be honest, like because it went slow motion and the music changed, there was a split second where I thought, wait, have I just gone the wrong way and have I killed off Markus here? But like thankfully he then just drops into the water. But yeah, like I don't know, there's like very basic scene, but I suppose it's sort of like observational stuff, this scene, like this whole scene, what it's testing you on with like the scanning and, you know, just sort of the pure visual enjoyment of seeing like the parkour. But yeah, no, it was really good.
Before we get in the boat as well, I just wanted to just, again, as I always do, every chapter looks stunning. But, we kind of had a brief conversation about it as well, didn't we? Even when you get off the train, the amount of detail they put in just to the city, Detroit around, they've taken the time to, do the skyscrapers in the background, put the plants in the windows. Even when you get to, the more decrepit parts where you're going down the alleyways past the fences, the graffiti and the broken walls.
Yeah.
I think it's morning at this point, so, like there's the sunrise. And it's got like, especially when you're on that boat before you dive into, like the boat area, it's got quite like a sepia, like reddish tone. And I thought the whole thing was really stunning, like again and again. And I like the way that every chapter isn't like a very similar theme. It's all got like, its unique palette almost. And it works like a treat, to be honest. But yeah, obviously you dive into the boat. I thought it was quite funny when you were like, it's not very bright in here, and then the first thing you is a torch, and I was like, that's convenient. But yeah, what did you make of this whole boat? It almost had a bit of a horror element to it, didn't it?
Yeah, like right off the bat, I was, you know how it is, that I was just straight up thinking, Man of Medan vibes, like spooky ship, it's a bit of a wreck. But honestly, like to come back to the point you said about the graphics, like I'd probably say that this is the best looking game I think I've ever played. Like the graphics are insane, the attention to detail, the colours as well, just like the lighting, like whether it's the neon lights, whether it's sort of like the light from the sun, there's like shadows and the way the light moves, like even previous, but I think it does do it in this one, but even previous scenes and chapters, where like someone like maybe have like blinds and the light gets cut because of the presence of the blind. Like it's so little things like that just really make this world immersive. So I'm in full agreement on the visuals.
Of course, I mean Quantic Dream, like we say, it's a shame the games are as rare as they are. They come out like as little as they do, but I'm so glad they don't rush them, because they're these masterpieces in my opinion, and I'm so thankful they exist. But yeah, like there's only 4 games out there. I mean, I know they did prior ones on like the PS1 and stuff, but they're just fantastic. I mean, it kind of just ends this Markus part really, where we get to like there's people that round up and say welcome to Jericho, and there's this one character who we'll later learn is called Simon, who you instantly pointed out is the same model as Daniel. So I mean, were you thinking it was Daniel or?
Yeah, last show I said that's Daniel from the opening scene. makes me question. I haven't really got any theories as to how that comes forward. Like maybe someone repaired his model and then something happened from there.
Yeah.
But they've clearly either escaped or they've been discarded, but they're still fully functioning. They've like created this group where I wouldn't necessarily describe it as like an uprising at this point. They are literally just reclusive. They're hiding away from humanity. But I think, as we'll sort of see later on, I think the presence of Markus, I think it then prompts them into acting rather than just sitting and waiting for something to happen to them.
Yeah. I mean, should we actually be unorthodox and stick to Markus in the final bit as well? Because it does go Connor and then back to Markus, but these scenes do go really hand in hand. So we might as well stick to it. I mean, you know, we meet the rest of the cast, really, as you can kind of go around. The one called Simon tells you, oh, go and meet Lucy. So you meet this really mysterious woman who heals the scar on, you know, your hip almost, you know, and makes you drink the blue blood to make you feel better, and tells your fortune. And I thought it was quite interesting how you said, I'm the new guy. Don't
Yeah.
It gave me Matrix vibes of like when Neo would join the group, and then, you know, you've got like, you know, you're almost like the chosen one, even though you're like instantly in there. So yeah, strong Matrix vibes. But yeah, what did you make of the whole sort of the assembly of the few characters you meet here and a few interactions with some of the AI of Jericho there?
Yeah, so like the scene with like Lucy, like you say, it's like your choices will shape our destiny. I'm like I've known you for 5 minutes, love. Like, come on, you know, give me a break. It took an absolute age to get here, you know. I then went and spoke to, I think her name's North, and she was just off with me right from the bat. And I was like, Jesus Christ, love, like, can you know, just be a little bit friendly, just engage in some small talk or whatever. But yeah, eventually, I can't remember what I said now, but eventually she was like coming round to me. And I then like investigated something at the back of the room, and it was something to do with like cargo or a package that came from somewhere, and that helped Markus to work out something which I'm not still quite sure on myself, but I'm sure I'll pick it up again when I play the next chapters. But yeah, and of course you talk to Simon, who I gather sort of like the cult leader, as it were, at this point anyway, which makes sense because he's the one I recognise. I don't think the others I recognise from anywhere.
Oh, also, actually, we can mention the random scene of the robot you met that died in your arms, who shook your hand and just passed away.
Oh god, yeah. So like, oh yeah, it made me laugh because it's sort of like, yeah, we were sat there, weren't we? We sat like, as soon as like the face sort of stopped and you're just there like, oh, it was like, yeah, it was a pleasure to meet you as well. I was like, God, you trying to let go of the arm after, it's like, let go of me.
Yeah, just you're there for 5 minutes and you've been like pushed into being the chosen one, and someone's just died in your arms. It's you know, a lot's been thrown on Paul Markus here, but obviously you have this plan to, you know, maybe try and steal some supplies or blue blood, because, you know, you have joined this faction who are obviously very crippled, you know, so it would be cool to see how Markus's story unfolds going forward. So we'll conclude with Connor here in a scene which I believe you've, you know, described swiftly afterwards as your favourite one of the game so far.
Indeed.
I don't know if it's because I know you're a big James Bond fan, but there was some 007 kind of like similarities, wasn't there?
There was.
I mean, it kind of is in two parts really, so we'll start with the first part. I mean, you know, there's a burger stand, and one of the things I love about this sequence here is just the interaction again between Hank and Connor, because they're chalk and cheese, so it creates some comedy moments, but also there are some deep moments with it as well, and I just think it's so well done. Obviously, is his name Clancy Brown? Really brilliant actor that they've brought forward for the Hank role. And then he goes hand in hand with Connor, you know, whether it's talking about the gambling or, you know, he's lecturing him about the cholesterol. And the way he's like, oh, you don't have to follow me around like a poodle everywhere. So yeah, I mean, what did you make of this whole kind of little burger sequence, mate?
It's good, yeah, because like I know, you know, when you first with Hank, a couple of chapters back, and you're investigating the crime scene, he said stay in the car. I don't know if you can stay in the car, but I just straight up chose to get out, and he's like, what are you doing? I told you to stay in the car. exact same thing happens here. And I approached the guy at the stand. He's obviously doing some like illegal gambling with some sort of guy that he must know outside of the police. And then he orders a burger, and like you get this opportunity to scan. I was like, I scanned the food, and I scanned the guy in the at the burger stand as well, and it said that he had a history of like poor hygiene in like food, and I was sort of looking at that as like a warning. I was like, oh, has he somehow like laced something, in Hank's food? And then Hank just like walked off, and I was like, all right, okay, let's go and have a chat. And the first option that come up is like, yeah, about the cholesterol. And I was trying to think, what's the best way to sort of perhaps bring that up about the guy's hygiene. But he didn't. It was just like him giving like a food lecture, of course, which Hank sort of like bats away. But I feel like come the end of this conversation, I don't know if it was because I made the quote unquote right choices, but Hank was just dead silent listening to Connor, and it felt like it was the first time that Connor was starting to get through to Hank, and he was sort of starting to accept him more and more. And it actually does play out this way as well at the following of the next scene, but I won't jump there just yet because there's so much more of that scene to explain, which I love.
Yeah, the transition between Connor and Hank is very good, and it's also very varied as well based on the choices. You can have a very hostile relationship, and it does affect the game. So, it is really interesting to see how them as a pair work, and to also see how you're going to handle them. I mean, then we get a tip, don't we, that there's a suspicious deviant in the area, potentially a few blocks away. So you go and check it out. More funny dialogue, that goes forward throughout, as always. And you break down the door, don't you? And it's while you're trying to solve a case, it's mainly Hank complaining about, the vast amount of pigeons that are everywhere, which is really funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, just talk us through this scene, Jack, about the clues you found and what happened.
Yeah, I will. I suppose another thing I'll say again, because I know that like in this game so far, you've been into some proper grotty, grimy places, whether it's the scrapyard with Markus, there's a couple of like apartments or places of crime scenes, and the juxtaposition with that and say like Carl's mansion and when you're out on the street with the neon lights, it works so well because you really do feel like you're going into like very different environments and different areas of Detroit, which I thought was really cool and thought it was worth mentioning. Yeah, so like you find a lot of these clues regarding this suspect who was clearly writing something on the wall, and then once he hears you arrive, he like falls over, and this is all through like a reconstruction. And how you like work that out, I think is really cool. Where you can even like pivot the camera as well to like see certain things, and you can see that he goes up into the attic. There's more nods about RA9, so that's obviously something that's going to be coming up later in the game. There was the book and the maze, and actually speaking of the maze, because this game came out in 2018 I think, and I know that HBO's Westworld come out in like 2015, like season 1, and a big emphasis on that. Sorry, we're like quick tangent to Westworld. A big theme of like Westworld was about the maze and what the maze represented, and it was basically that once you find the centre of the maze, that's meant to represent that you found your true self. So then when I sort of saw in this scene lots of mazes, I was like, I wonder if that's a purposeful nod to like Westworld, and whether like they're going to use the maze in a very similar way here, because there's obviously all these themes of identity and stuff like that. But yeah, like just a really beautiful environment, and of course it then brings about this a very mini sort of like fight where the deviant drops down on you and Hank's like, get after him, and I was thinking, brilliant, we're like going to get into a proper like chase sequence now. And I didn't expect it to be as good as it was. There's so many things that you do. You're running through like I don't know if it's like fields on a rooftop at one point. You're like jumping, you're like sliding down roofs, you're on top of a train at one point. For me, like this little bit was like the best experience I have had with Detroit so far, because it was that perfect balance of action, which of course I liked. There was the sense of real jeopardy, not only with potentially getting Connor killed, but perhaps like losing the suspect. You got the music, like I just absolutely adore it. And of course it then comes to like the crescendo where Hank obviously intercepts him, and you then get a choice. Do you go after the deviant or do you save Hank? And I did see it say that Hank has an 89% chance of survival. When I first made that choice, I assumed it was 89% chance of survival if I went towards him. Immediately after the choice, I thought, no, that probably means that I could have gone after the deviant because he was likely to pull himself up off the roof anyway. So I actually let the deviant go. But again, Hank seemed to really appreciate it. And, it looks like that they are starting to get closer together. But I don't know what you think of that scene, mate, and like what your ending was. But I've just so much praise for it. The different QTEs, everything.
Yeah, like, I love this whole sequence. It's just the transition of, like, say, the burger stand where it's dialogue to more crime scene stuff where you're doing the reconstruction, and then the heavy chase. There's just, it's in layers. There's just a lot of variety in this one kind of chapter alone. And yeah, I know, like you say, it's brilliant. Not only is the setting beautiful, where you've got like, the workers in the cornfields, and sort of like the construction going on around you, and it just looks really unique, where you're running on rooftops and you can drop down through like the roof, and then at one point you're sliding on the glass. It's like you say as well, when you jump on the train, the whole thing's really cool. It feels really rewarding when you get to the end as well, because this is a challenging bit. I have seen a lot of people kill Connor, and you can actually just take too long, or if you have to really keep an eye on where Rupert goes, because if you don't, you can walk the wrong way. Timer runs out, and then Hank's like, oh damn, he got away, and then the scene just kind of ends, and Hank gets pissed off with you, I believe, and Rupert gets away. When it comes to the choice, I did the same thing as you. I've got to save Hank here. If you don't save Hank, Hank will save himself. He doesn't die there, but he is immensely pissed off with you, and it will affect your relationship massively. But obviously, you and what I did on my first one is we have massively missed out on a clue that Rupert will give us before he inevitably kills himself, because he just doesn't want to be locked up. So, there's pros and cons to doing either choice. But personally, I've voiced it before, I'm a massive Hank fan. I think, you probably did the right one. But yeah, it's a really interesting scene, and it ends it on a massively high note here. So, yeah, the game just... I think in terms of pacing as well, mate, you've played about half the game at this point. We're about halfway through the series and Jack playing the game. The pacing's been great. It's not really dipped off at any point. It's been pretty consistent. Like, you're probably similar to what I said at this point, where Markus is probably the weaker of the three.
Yeah.
Although still really strong. It's not I'm not enjoying it. He's like, the three characters have their strengths. I love how varied they are as well in the themes as well, because you've got Connor, who's on the side of like the cops chasing these deviants, but so like you've got the whole crime sort of police element. You've got Markus, who's kind of like the redemption kind of like Oracle Neo-esque thing, where it's like trying to start this new community. And then you've got like the kind of homeless / motherhood story of protection, which like links kind of a little into like Lee and Clementine in a way. It's a very similar sort of theme, and there's three different sort of themes going on here, but they're all in the same boat, where it's either being a misunderstood android. And I think it's so amazing how they've done something similar yet so different out of nothing. And like we say as well, like the whole Detroit location and all the different sort of rooms that you can go in and stuff. It's just fantastic, and I'm really loving the game so far. And so hopefully it carries on, in the same manner, and it doesn't dip off at any point for yourself, and hopefully you don't fall out of the game and you're enjoying it as much as you are at the halfway point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I've got nothing else to add, really. So if you want to wrap it up there.
Yeah, that sounds good. But thank you very much for joining us for the halfway point, guys. We hope you stick around for the next ones, and we hope you've enjoyed everything so far. We'll end up seeing what Jack does. Is he going to end up killing Carl, Rick, Connor, and Marcus? So yeah, let's see, guys. But thank you very much for joining, and we'll see you in the next one.
Yeah, see you in the next one, guys. Bye bye.